as of right now, there's still a lot of skepticism over Cuomo's run. Here's the skepticism. You had your shot.
It was a shock when Mamdani won last week.
The negatives on this guy are going to be driven up dramatically soon. If you ramp up turnout a little bit, scare the shit out of people, Mamdani will lose.
I'm Lydia Moynihan, a correspondent for the New York Post, and each week Post columnist and Fox Business correspondent Charles Gasparino and I cut through the noise and dive straight into the biggest stories shaping business, tech, and politics. We tackle what's moving markets, what's happening in Silicon Valley, and what's driving decisions in DC. This is where business, tech, and politics intersect. And we're not afraid to ask the tough questions. Okay, Charlie, you have some reporting that's been coming out this week about the latest in the mayoral race. Obviously, it was a shock when Mamdani won last week, and now people are trying to coalesce around one candidate.
Right. I mean, there's literally a battle royale for the business community support right now. I mean, here's what you had. You had literally a sort of momentum shift after that, after last Tuesday, where business communities started to, basically go to Eric Adams and say, give us your agenda. We may be ready to support you full on. A lot of these were former Cuomo supporters, who courted the business community, raised a lot of money for them. But, here's where we are. We are right now a battle royale for the business community support. And I would say as of right now, there's still a lot of skepticism over Cuomo's run from the business community, at least the people I speak to. And here's the skepticism. You had your shot.
Yep.
Why should we trust you to run a real tough campaign? He didn't attack, and I think we've said this, and we've been talking about this for, obviously a week now, because it's a big business story. Mm-hmm. Businesses care if a socialist that wants to, make New York City into a communist
Look,
mecca.
We're seeing in England, I just saw a headline, it's the largest exodus of billionaires from a place after they implemented a new tax regime in there. So we're looking at, that's in England. Right. Imagine how much worse that's going to be in New York, where it's much easier, just instead of leaving the country, you just move states.
You move to Florida. By the way, you can move to Jersey. It's not so bad. You can move to Connecticut, which isn't so bad. I'm just telling you, there's places to go.
It's a well-trodden path.
And some people have already done it, but more people are going to do it. And so my point is that the business community is worried about this because a lot of these people still have real estate here, believe it or not. They don't want it to go to zero. But there is a battle royale for their support. Now, most business people aren't the biggest voting bloc. But again, it's where the money is. They'll give to whoever campaign they'll give to. They'll give a lot of money. And hopefully that person will be able to use that money, whether it's Cuomo or Adams, to make their case that this guy is existentially bad. The real question is, what does Curtis Sliwa do? How much he's the Republican candidate? How much does he pull out of the vote? Here's what I've heard. And just a lot of people think if it's three-way, Mamdani will lose. It's where, even with Curtis in it, it's where it gets four-way, where he essentially divides up all the normal people and takes all the crazies and he wins.
Yeah, interesting, because you don't need a majority, you need a plurality.
Right.
Hedge fund managers and a lot of the business community are leaning towards Adams at this point.
True.
I understand Ackman had a meeting with Adams, so I think he is piquing interest. The concern is that Adams is very disorganized. He still doesn't have a good social media person. He's looking for a new one. He still doesn't have much of an infrastructure for his campaign.
He's got Frank Carone
who's the chair.
His point man.
I don't know that he's integrally involved in actually running the campaign. The concern is that he has so many PACs now. People around him are trying to launch PACs as a way to get money and presumably have access to that money themselves. So he's very disorganized at this point. I know there was a headline. He's trying to host fundraisers. He did find somebody in the span of a day in the Hamptons to host something for him this weekend.
You going? I know you're a Hamptons person.
Oh yeah, you know me. I would avoid attending. It might be some good reporting. I don't think they'd want to have me there. The concern is that he basically has 4 months to really turn everything around.
4 months? He's got 4 minutes.
I don't know.
He's got to do it fast.
I don't know that he can, because again, with kind of the same question that you have about Cuomo, if he didn't do well before, past isn't prologue, but who's to say anything will change? Well, Adams does not have the infrastructure right now that he needs, and I don't know that even if he gets those donors, that he'll be able to assemble that.
Cuomo's message is that Adams is unelectable. That's what he's been spreading to the business community.
He did only win by 7,000 votes last time.
Yeah,
this was not a landslide.
Right, but we're talking a little different now. Here's what I think, to be honest with you. Any of those two can win. The negatives on this guy are going to be driven up dramatically soon. I mean, I don't care what anybody says. You can talk about the young people and, they love his flash and all this stuff. some of the stuff that's lurking around social media with this guy and what's coming out of his mouth is so stupid. It's so easily mocked. It's so scary that I really believe that if this thing becomes a referendum on him, as long as Adams doesn't get re-indicted, which I guess is always a theoretical possibility, although I have not heard anything on that, just full disclosure, he can win. And Cuomo can win. So we're just going to have to see how this plays out, because the Mondavi is just, again, he has loyal supporters. If you ramp up turnout a little bit, scare the shit out of people, which I think should be the modus operandi. And I think that's where it gets interesting between Cuomo and Adams. If you can scare the shit out of people, you get them to ramp up turnout, which you need to do. He can lose, and I think he can lose significantly. And here's what you're going to see. You're going to see Adams is already playing hardball, right? He's out there, calling him names on social media, calling him, lucky sperm kid, essentially. That's what he's saying.
Totally.
Cuomo is still, laying back. I just don't
I don't think his heart is in it. That's
then
the
issue.
Then
he should drop. I mean, listen, I think what you need to do is ramp up support and turnout from sectors that didn't turn out enough.
Yeah.
Hispanics, Orthodox Jews, white ethnics, the black community. That's all Cuomo's constituency, and especially in a Republican primary, you may get some Republicans that switch over. That's all his constituency that just didn't turn out. Now I don't know if they will turn out for him ultimately, but you need to turn that out. And you can turn that out. And that goes beyond social media. That goes beyond, you got to scare them. And people have to know what's at stake. I mean, if you look at when we had, massive turnouts in past elections, it was Bloomberg after 9/11. It was, check my math on that. I think the turnout was pretty good after 9/11. And so if you can do that, you can expand the electorate and you can win. And I think that's what has to be done. Now, can Cuomo, who didn't do that, do it? I think Eric Adams has the sort of temperament to do it. But is he so, besmirched by the past? The ethics scandals, he was indicted. He's got some association with Trump, which can cut both ways in the city, right? I don't know. But I do think this guy's beatable.
Yeah, I think he needs a really smart advisor and a clear strategy, and Adams could pull it off. It is so astonishing, though, that in the left movement we're saying, two of the biggest figures right now are Mamdani and AOC, both of whom have truly lived the American dream. They're talking about how horrible the system is, and the system, in reality, actually worked pretty well for them. Mamdani went to school, didn't even really work, and now he has the chance of being mayor of the biggest city. AOC, again, yes, she worked as a bartender, but she worked her way up, and now she's in the U.S. Congress. So it's so interesting these people hate the system so much, and yet it actually worked out pretty okay for them.
You know what's funny about AOC, if we can get back to this sort of mythology that she created about herself, she didn't have to create that mythology. I know the town she grew up in, because I grew up there. Okay, I grew up in a 1,000-foot house. My father bought it, for, I think it was 16 grand. It was in front of the UPS plant and the town dump. It was 3 or 4 blocks away from Section 8 housing. Now, was it better than the Bronx where I came from? Of course. My cousins would tell you we had trees in the backyard. And you played baseball all night. We used to play baseball too, in the dark. You know what I'm saying? That's how crazy. It was that type of upbringing. You could do that, but it was far from Scarsdale. My old man worked 3 jobs, and the guys I went to school with, they were all construction workers and stuff. She comes from that similar thing. I don't know why she just didn't stick with that. Instead, she had to make up this mythology that she's from the hood, Jenny from the hood. Yorktown, by the way, is a reasonably nice place, not a silver spoon place to grow up, and she did pretty well. She went from there to Congress. That's so great. I don't know. I don't know why she just doesn't
embrace it.
Embrace it. It's not bad.
Well, whatever she's doing seems to be working with her constituents. Okay, this week, lots of talk about the big, beautiful bill. It's passed the Senate. Now it's going back to the House. So still waiting on that sort of final vote. Mike Johnson has signaled he's unhappy with some of the things that got tacked on in the Senate. But I'm very curious because everyone's talking about the impact on the debt, right? Our debt is now, especially with this bill, it's going to be more than our annual GDP. Lots of concerns about how much money we're spending to service that debt. What are bonds doing, Charlie? I know this is sort of your wheelhouse and your expertise.
Right now, there's no implosion in the bond market over this. Not yet. I mean, there is worries.
You think there will be?
Could be. You know, Bessent is still playing games. Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, playing the same games that Yellen did with debt management. He's issuing a lot of short-term debt, not to freak out. So if you roll over to pay for the deficit, short-term debt, you pay a lower interest rate than if you issue 10-year bonds. If you issue a lot of 10-year bonds, the interest rates could go up, right? And that spikes interest rates on all consumer loans and mortgages and things. So you don't want that. But it's still bad debt management. It shows that you're hiding something. It shows you you're not really getting your hands around the deficit. And that's kind of what people are saying right now. Now, whether this causes a conniption in the bond market is, I can't tell you just yet. We'll know soon. I mean, there are some people like Ray Dalio that are out there saying that.
Well, Ray Dalio has predicted 20 of the last two recessions.
Or zero. The other, and it's not just him. The other thing is, I don't know why they keep calling this the big, beautiful bill. It is like big. There's nothing big about it. There's nothing beautiful about this. I think
it's big. I mean, it is funny. It's the same acronym as Build Back Better.
Yeah, but it's ridiculous. I don't know why Trump throws all these superlatives at things. I mean, I know why he does it, but he shouldn't on this thing because it opens the door for the Democrats to say this is a big tax cut for the rich. It's not.
Oh, well, Schumer got his word in edgewise and changed the name of the bill.
Right, but
he got them with the nomenclature.
Okay, so then they turn around and then they say, "Oh, it's massive cuts to entitlements." It's not. They're not cutting entitlements. They're
trying to get illegal immigrants off of the welfare state.
Right, and they're slowing the rate of growth on some of these programs, right?
And saying like, maybe you should work 80 hours a month.
Yeah, it was just
if you're going to get access to this in your able body.
It's so ridiculous to be throwing these words around on something like this that literally is business as usual.
I'm curious to get your take though, because obviously the messaging is that actually this is not going to add to the deficit because the tax cuts are going to spur economic growth and it'll pay for itself. Is that a gimmick, or do you think there's a valid argument?
There is. I mean, they're screwing around with the baseline. So they're saying it's going to add to the deficit. The reason why they're saying it's adding to the deficit is because they're taking the budget as is, and they basically said, well, you have to take out the $3 trillion, the tax cuts, right? Mm-hmm. Tax cuts are just being extended. These aren't new tax cuts.
Right.
So, I mean, I think businesses, and they don't take into account what that might do for economic growth. By the way, both sides play that game. So that's what the CBO does. What the Trump administration does, which is fascinating, is it plays the same game with tariffs. It's telling us all, well, these tariffs, we're going to get like $200 billion in cost savings because of this. Guess what? They don't tell you that if you raise tariffs, that could have an impact on GDP. That's negative. And there'll be less consumer spending. There'll be less buying. It'll hurt GDP. So both sides do the same thing. Where no one knows how this works out is, does the extension of the tax cuts, the Trump tax cuts, does the notion that you have deregulation, that we've got this thing behind us, business has some certainty, does that negate the negative effects of tariffs, which you're going to get some negative effects? Not a lot, remember, because they're putting the genie back in a bottle, but there's something there. And that I can't tell you. And then on top of it all, how does the bond market react to another $2 trillion budget deficit? You know, are people getting tired of it? Or does the tariffs actually outweigh the tax cuts in terms of growth, and that budget deficit gaps out more?
Yeah.
And then that becomes possibly an issue for the bond market. So there's there's some uncertainty here.
Yeah. I mean, Elon Musk is going crazy talking about this. It's odd to me, though, that Doge, I think, was important and significant, but it ended up cutting less than about $100 billion, I think, according to some estimates.
But I think what's good about Doge was the fact that
I think it was great, but it's not like in any way, shape, or form it significantly altered the deficit.
Well, we never applied it to the big ticket items. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. You got to apply it across the board. Military. If you applied those concepts across the board, you'd be surprised how much you'd save. And by the way, I think it opened people's eyes. Why were we funding transgender dance festivals in Bangladesh? I mean, what was the utility of that?
Fair. No, I am in agreement with you, but I think it was painted as something that was going to significantly improve the economic state of affairs, I think.
Or cut into the deficit.
And so Elon Musk is like, oh, what was the point of Doe? It's like, there was a significant point, but no, it didn't actually move the needle when it came to
not much.
The deficit. Or
not enough.
Now he's threatening, Elon Musk is threatening to create a third party, which has been tried before. I mean, I spoke with people about this. Sounds like Mike Bloomberg has explored this. Every rich person at some point
I grew up in the Perot years.
Could this happen? Could this work? Looked at the statistics and determined the same thing, that it's not feasible. You can steal votes from someone, but you can't actually elect a third party candidate. You can spoil an election. That's it.
I think what Elon probably, I don't know. I mean, who knows? Third parties are difficult. The best one was Perot, who did sway elections back in the day, but that was force of personality. He was a harbinger of Trump, essentially, of this sort of, more of a nationalistic, working class party. The Republican Party has now subsumed all that. I'm not quite sure who Elon's constituency is if he runs. I mean, how many people are like, okay, I'm willing to indulge in austerity for the next 30 years, for this party. I just don't know. I mean, where he might be sort of effective is financing certain candidates for seats that are hawks on the deficit, and that could be good.
This week, Trump, in an interview with Maria Bartiromo, weighed in on the ongoing TikTok debate. He's already pushed the deadline back to ban it.
We broke that story
multiple times.
We broke the last one on the money.
You did. And now there's chatter that there are in fact buyers. What is your take on that? Do you think there's somebody he has waiting in the wings? So
here's the thing about Trump. He's a master at creating news where there's no news sometimes. The problem here is not the buyers. They had a buyer.
Yeah, they have. Feels like everyone and their mother.
They had Oracle. I mean, that's who they'll have for this. Or they have like a consortium that J.D. Vance put together. We've written a million stories about that. The problem was the buyers. They didn't have a seller.
Yeah.
The Chinese were holding up the sale of them to make it an American company because of this trade war we're engaged in. And on top of that, there's this whole controversy whether even if the Chinese give up, ownership, sort of majority ownership of it, does that still comport with the law that says there has to be no Chinese control of it? There is a law that was approved by the Supreme Court. And if you're a business and you engage in violating that law, you are held liable for treble damages. Now, the president is in charge of enforcing what control is. So Trump can turn around and say, well, I think them giving up majority control and us using their algorithm is not control. But another president could come in and say, oh no, we think that isn't control. You violated the law. We're going to hit you, Oracle or whoever, with treble damages. So,
well, I mean, and in the law, I believe, they're responsible for billions of dollars a day.
Yeah, I mean, it's off.
If the next president wanted to enforce that, they would be easily bankrupt.
So there is a law. I mean, and by the way, Republicans in Congress want to uphold that law, just so you know. So this is sort of interesting, and I'm not quite sure why he said he had buyers, because there are buyers.
Right.
It was the seller, and it was the terms of the sale, and things of that nature. I mean, who wouldn't want? I mean, if you were Oracle, wouldn't you want to own TikTok?
Every billionaire under the sun wants to have some sort of stake in the most popular, relevant app that the next generation is obsessed with. So it makes sense why everyone's trying to kind of get their foot in the door and weasel their way in. But yeah, you're right. China knows all that, and so they're not going to approve a sale.
And what type of sale are they going to approve?
Right. Are they going to give up the algorithm?
So if they give up the algorithm, which they will never do, if they don't give up the algorithm, I mean, you talk to Tom Cotton. Okay, they didn't give up the algorithm. What do you think? Well, I think it violates the law. I mean, and then you get like such crazy, well, the president interprets the law. Well, he does now, but who knows where it comes.
It is remarkable. I mean, the data that all of these congressmen and senators looked at must have been so alarming for this to pass in a bipartisan fashion. But the issue is that it's still very unpopular with the general public. So I think that's what a lot of these companies are banking on, is like the next president. The longer TikTok lasts, the more ingrained it's going to get in society. The next president isn't going to want to come in and try and unwind all of that. So I'm curious. Tom Cotton's been very critical. Who has, Marco Rubio is another big China hawk. He obviously works for Trump now. Who's going to have the chutzpah to go in and really try and make this an issue when it's not a popular issue with the electorate?
I don't think there's a groundswell of save TikTok on the streets right now. I could be wrong.
Enough to spook any politician who really wants to take action against it.
I don't know. I think it's Trump. Trump likes it. I don't see Tom Cotton freaking out about, oh, we lost TikTok, I'm not going to be reelected. Or Ted Cruz. Like, oh my God, no TikTok, I'm screwed in the next election. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I just think that this is a Trump thing, and he's like all in. I mean, there's certain things that Trump likes, and it makes him sort of idiosyncratic in so many ways. It's like TikTok. Like most people wouldn't go, wouldn't fall on the sword for TikTok, but he is. Getting rid of Jerome Powell. Like, you could just wait Jerome Powell out, right? But he just wants to get rid of him now. So it's just the way Donald is. Mr. President, I should say.
Classic. And that is a wrap for today. We will be back next week with more insights, debates, and the hard-hitting discussions you won't get anywhere else. Until then, stay informed, stay engaged, and keep questioning what you hear.
And have a great 4th of July.